So, this is a transcript I felt the need to record and upload to raise awareness with my thought process on an important phenomenon that seems to be more relevant these days. And I understand the burden of a short attention span because at times I have one too. And I also understand the preference to a video over reading, so I chose this medium as a means of remedy. So please bear with me because I believe this is detrimental to our children's future. And if you agree, please, I encourage you to share this to raise awareness for this phenomenon. I had come across a recent guilty verdict for Mark Redwine, a Colorado man who was convicted for the murder of his 13-year-old son. The article stated there was a dispute over photographs regarding a particularly unique and strange fetish that ultimately led up to the murder. And like most of us, I viewed this article as just another loss without the proper level of empathy I should have had for the survivors and the family. But the headlines were vague about the photograph, so I made the assumption that the boy was in possession of these pictures and the father had killed him over this disappointment and embarrassment. And essentially, I had surmised that the father had projected his inadequacies onto the son in this fashion, but that struck me as particularly odd because, generally speaking, anybody who has a sense of shame enough to feel any sort of distaste for someone else's pornographic addiction probably wouldn't have the capacity to take anyone's life, let alone their own child. So I looked into it further and took note of the details in this case. It turns out the father, of course, was the one in possession of these photographs, and his boy had discovered them. And out of anger for his son's respect of privacy or lack thereof, and out of fear of public ridicule, he murdered his son and disposed of the body in different locations. And this is very difficult to hear. And I can only imagine what sort of emotional pain that family is going through at the moment. It's very hard to talk about it. Most of the time it's easier not to talk about it or think about it because that is a lot more soothing. But unfortunately, that way of thinking is exactly why these issues are still taking place in this world. There's no solution yet. So it stands to reason that anything that's difficult to do is usually worth doing. So going public with my thought process out of the blue is a really difficult thing for me to do. However, my beliefs tell me that if I have the ability to do the right thing, then I have the responsibility to do the right thing. So I feel a civic duty to bring to light some of the insight that I personally took away from this tragedy. And I find it's imperative that we host the capacity to reflect upon the most difficult topics that we face as a society today, first off. Neutralizing the stigma of a distasteful subject invites the potential for new solutions. We can either possess ideology or we can be possessed by ideology. And one of the greatest difficulties we face today is the fact that we are uncomfortable with unfamiliar territory. Now, there are those who say that we have a stronghold on crime. And to them, I say, no, we don't. The fact that we have prisons with people in them is a testament to my conclusion the justice system is not a tool used to effectively prevent crime. The justice system is an establishment to serve justice after the crime has already been committed. What we need is a tool that is used to prevent crime. It would be better to have the justice system and not need it than to have it, need it, and it doesn't work. Now, I do have a good point with this next part, but it's going to get a little bumpy until I reach it, so bear with me. Now, this man had justified, in his mind, killing his son for two reasons. His son didn't respect his privacy, and he had privacy he needed respect for. Think about that. His son didn't respect his privacy, and he had privacy that he needed respect for. He hid his habits because of public ridicule, which is the result of our own lack of patience and understanding for our place in the animal kingdom. Nature is clear that we are completely flawed and imperfect beings, and without a doubt in my mind, it's essential that we commit to exploring new grounds in our ideology as a society. We need to study human nature on an individual basis because human nature causes strange and destructive behavioral patterns that we desperately need to find a remedy for. Our ignorance to it is a contributing factor to the victimization of all of us in some way or another, and it goes without saying that civility seems to be a quality that we're all in an alarmingly short supply of these days, and having the capacity to show civility towards one another demonstrates our ability to tame the more destructive elements of our natural instincts. Now, not only do I believe that we are on a path that leads to total discontinuation of our efforts to demonstrate civility, but I also believe that we are neglecting our relationship with nature entirely. If we're unaware of the origins of our drive to cause harm to another form of life, then how can we effectively prevent this victimization in the first place? Our lack of understanding is the perpetuation of the vicious cycle that we find ourselves to be in, and we're completely oblivious to it. Exploring our nature is the only way to gain an understanding for it. When we expect perfection out of a fellow human and demonize them for their ultimate failures, we should also expect secrets to be kept. And depending on the varying degrees, we should also expect a crime to be committed in an attempt to keep those secrets hidden. Had his strange fetish not been so stigmatized from the beginning, he would have probably received help, or at least a more open resource for guidance, where his sexual health probably wouldn't have manifested into such an unhealthy addiction. His son would have never have found those pictures because they may have never existed, so he may still be alive and well today. My ultimate point and suggestion here is this. We need to stop judging our kids so harshly for their flaws and these failures, and we certainly need to stop using fear as a form of control in the manner in which we do today. Living in the world where no one is cruel to each other is a world we never feel the need to wear this metaphorical mask. That will ultimately enable this trusted guidance. Like most social experiments, it takes several generations, but the love that they will experience in that world will be great, and it starts at home with you. Seek wisdom, learn what love really is, and apply it every day, every chance you get.